I think we shouldn't exaggerate. When we talk about the kind of rise of fundamentalism and nationalism, again, we should have an historical perspective and realize that, yes, we see now a wave in the last few years, but it's nothing like what it was in the past. Religion now is far, far weaker than in previous eras. In previous eras, religion was everywhere. You're sick, you go to the priest, not to the doctor. There is not enough rain, there is not enough food, you go to the temple to do some ceremony. Today, even with the religious people in places like, I don't know, Iran or Israel, when they are sick, they go to the doctor, not to the rabbi or the mullah. When there is not enough rain, they go to the engineers. The sphere in which religion is important has been shrinking rapidly over the last few centuries. And it's the same with people talking about the rise of nationalism. Nationalism today, certainly in Europe, is far, far weaker than it was a century or two ago. A century ago, Europeans were killing each other by the million in national conflicts.
But we read in the papers every day about terrorism and fundamentalism, and you call it a theater of terror?
Terrorism is basically theater. I mean, you look at the numbers, certainly in the West, the place where terrorism is really serious is mostly within the Islamic world, where it kills thousands of people every year. In the West, more people die from nut allergy than from terrorism. We should deal with the nuts before we are dealing with the terrorists.
And Coca-Cola is worse than Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, much. I mean, the number of people, there are hundreds of thousands of people die each year from diabetes and from obesity-related diseases. The number of people who die from terrorism in the West is maybe a couple of dozens every year. So sugar is a far, far greater threat to your life, at least in the West, than Al-Qaeda and all these terrorists. And the terrorists work because they are good at theater, at capturing our imagination. They stage these immense spectacles of violence, and then the media jumps on it and shows it again and again and again, and you think the end of the world is coming. And they're really hijacking our imagination and using it against us. Usually the terrorists are actually very, very weak. I often compare them to like a mosquito that tries to destroy a china shop. How does a mosquito destroy a china shop? It's so weak it can't move even a single glass. So the method is, it finds an elephant, goes into its ear, starts buzzing, and the elephant goes wild and destroys everything. This is what Al-Qaeda did to the Americans. Al-Qaeda couldn't destroy the order in the Middle East, but it got into the ear of the American elephant, and the elephant destroyed it for them.
The problem with these great stories you tell us, they are too difficult to understand, not because they are difficult, because the truth is too difficult to understand. And that's why still the majority of biology teachers in the United States does not accept evolution theory. That's why on Google, the flat earth theory is rising, and they even advise you watching it by the billions. That's why in French school books nowadays they say the CIA bombed their own Twin Towers in New York. That's myth. That's the stories you want.
The thing is that the truth is often complicated and inconvenient, even painful. Whereas when you create a fiction, you can make it very simple and very flattering and appealing. In almost every country, a politician who will tell the voters the truth about the history of their country will never be elected, because it's too painful, too unpleasant to contemplate who we really are. But to a large extent, we need to make this effort. Because of the immense powers that we are acquiring now, and we discussed earlier, it's more important than ever to know the truth about ourselves, especially about our own dark side, our own weaknesses. If you just flatter people, then yes, they will vote for you, but then they will have a very distorted view of themselves. the level of a country, on the level of the entire species. And we should get used to the idea that we are now basically the gods of planet Earth. We have now divine powers of creation and destruction, and we need to be responsible gods. And for that, we need to understand who we really are, and especially what our weaknesses are.